What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the Last of Us factions yet again, and talk about a renewed sense of just anger at this entire situation. So look, I went back, I replayed The Last of Us Part 2, I did a whole retrospective, pretty long, 30-plus minutes on my third channel, Podcast Now Back to the Past. Okay, I'll link that video here, but what I wanted to do on this main channel is, okay, let's, what happened there, the story, the controversy, the back and forth online. Let me talk about something that I think maybe we can all agree on a little bit more is the multiplayer, okay? It reminded me, if nothing else, your opinions on the story be damned, okay? One way or the other. But the gameplay, okay? How this game operates, the level design, the AI, these are things I'm going to bring up in this video. Number one, so freaking good, okay? I think I've always believed that. You can probably check me on that in all these videos I've done. I think this game, it functionally is extremely, extremely good. And it makes me mad, to be honest with you. Like, it makes me mad that, like, Bungie was given the keys for some reason, which literally continues to look worse every day, right? Not to say, like, these PlayStation studios didn't need to be checked up on and say, hey, do you really think you need to make the live service game? Because maybe all of you doing, like, 12 live service games isn't the right idea. They probably did need to get checked. But having Bungie be, like, the masters of their fate and say, well, we wouldn't do that if we were you. And it's like, well, you're Bungie, as we know. And also in collaboration, okay, I'm lumping it a lot on Bungie, but to be honest, Naughty Dog decided, hey, if we do this, I think the line was, if we do Last of Us Factions, we won't be able to make Intergalactic. But one thing I can tell you, okay, is I think the scope was off. And this is where I want to make this video, because I think I've thought for a long time, and I've talked about it every time we heard any update on factions, like, why couldn't this have just been done in a simpler way, right? Like, why are we even at the point that we're at? So, again, replaying part 2 and taking in everything, and again, that's what that retrospective video was, but taking in the gameplay for the purposes here, it really does, honestly, frustrate me why we can't have a multiplayer, like, tie-in. Like, look, I'm against live service, or I've always spoken out against, I'd say, the weaker elements of it, let's say. But I mean, like, PS3 era Alex, like me growing up, Resistance, Killzone, Uncharted, like, even the weirder ones, right? Assassin's Creed, Dead Space, BioShock, Mass Effect, all these games that had, in some ways, throwaway multiplayer elements that actually turned out to be quite cool, right? I'm fine with them. If you want to make an Uncharted multiplayer type thing and attach it in, factions, how about the first game, right? I mean, these are things that I think can work extremely well done on a smaller scope. Now, maybe that's not possible anymore. I would like to say that's not true, though. Like, I just really think people don't try to do it anymore. It's not that you can't, it's that nobody wants to even give it a shot anymore. And when it comes to, like, my ideas and just the overall frustration, like, they had it. They had it in the base freaking game. Okay, number one, there are so many maps, and I didn't want to, like, actively think this as I was playing. I kind of, like, waited to the end of the levels to think it. But, honestly, you're going around a level, you're taking out the enemies, and each little, like, area in The Last of Us Part 2 is kind of sanctioned off, right? Like, there's a specific theme, whether it's enemy types or, like, maybe somebody, like, a higher up, right? Like, can, like, see you from higher up. And then there's people, on the ground. Or maybe it's clickers as well as humans. Or whether, think about going after Nora, right? And you're underground and they come in with, like, the gas masks, but there's also infected. There's clickers there, right? Literally every area, every mission has, like, a distinct thing. So as you're going through, at least nowadays, right, looking at it, it's like, oh my God, just pluck that map and throw it right into a multiplayer mode. What about, like, Abby, when you're going to the hospital, right? Now, you have those sequences where you're super, super high up, right, walking kind of the tightrope. But what about, like, the areas leading into it where you're fighting people on multiple levels, right? There's, like, 3-4 different levels, and they can be coming at any direction. You take that map and you just freaking pluck it into a multiplayer, and can you imagine? I mean, honestly, we have similar things to that in, like, Uncharted's multiplayer, right? I mean, you can see it with anything. You think about the Seraphite stuff, think about a lot of the Ellie stuff going into Seattle. I mean, like, do whatever you want. So many of these areas, literally their layout, because the layout, and this goes to, like, everything else, right? I mean, like, okay, the AI, there is something I want to bring in with the AI, but this isn't necessarily it. But a lot of these levels are built with, like, flame flanking tactics and like a lot of smart AI, because AI in this game is so good, right? And now, okay, the AI maybe wouldn't participate in the multiplayer, but other people would. And you've already designed the level where you have multiple angles. Again, every level is kind of distinct and has its own kind of flair. It's also because, well, it's how you choose to handle a situation. You could stealth your way through the entire thing. You could not kill anybody all the way through. You could go crazy and go after everybody, right? You can go through buildings, all those like where you can slip in through like that tiny little gap in like a wall or whatever, right? There's so many of those in this game. Could you imagine fighting people, real life people, in it? It's made for it. I mean, okay, it's made for the game. I don't want to take away from the game. It's made for the game, but you absolutely could do a multiplayer mode with it. And then, the one thing I would tie in, I've brought this up before, but again, replaying it, like reinvigorate, and it just makes me mad. It actually makes me frustrated. I like the idea that I've pitched before of like a player versus player, but then, let's add like PVPVE, right? And now they have this in the game. And to be fair, they didn't have it as much as I thought they did replaying it. It's like, oh, I thought this is actually more often. There are moments where enemies will be able to attack each other, right? You can think about towards the end with the wolves and seraphites. But my thing that really always stood out to me, there's a couple moments where you could turn infected against humans, okay? And you can think about it, like I just mentioned actually with the Nora stuff, or, Ellie towards the end in Santa Barbara. There's the 2 clickers that are attached in like the pool. And I mean, and they create chaos. It's not as grand as I remember it being. I think the wolves versus seraphites is like the most grand the AI going after each other is, okay? But there's a couple moments where infected do it too. This is what I'm pitching, by the way, okay? You make a multiplayer mode. It's not that in-depth. It's not a thing you support for 5 years. It's a thing that survives for a couple, right? Just based off it being, like, functionally solid. You've got all the mechanics. These characters move in really great ways. Prone, right? Like, being able to get down. Just the being shot, landing on your back, and still being able to fire shots. It's got all of these mechanics of a multiplayer mode already in. You got the locations. So you put 6 to 8 maps, okay? You got all of the skins. These characters, like, they're not all that different, and they don't need to be. By the way, we don't need to go super realistic, right? We don't need Abby. I mean, yeah, they got their own fighting styles, let's say, right? And maybe you can make them different. Like, actually, in the base game, say Ellie's pocket knife, you can, like, stealth kill clickers versus Abby, you need the shiv. You can't actually do it. If you want to go super in-depth like that and you want to bring in Joel, bring in Tommy, bring in Dina, bring in Jesse, all these characters, right? You could do that, but honestly, you don't even need to. You can make them all very generic and just have them be like the characters, right? The assets of these characters. Okay, so you got those things. You got all the weapons. You got your crafting. You copy, by the way, just a lot of the first game's factions. You have a couple different modes, and then all I would suggest is kind of like the flair or something a little bit unique and different is you use that, again, like enemy versus enemy thing you did in the base game. You throw that in because it's not in it as much as I remember it, and it's not super grand, but it is definitely a cool idea. You just double down on it, and that's your main sell for the multiplayer. You have a couple different locations that have, if you want to have actually AI as well, and you put them on like harder difficulties, then you do that. Maybe you're in a war zone with the seraphites, and they can they can distract you, and if it's a free-for-all, they can distract you from that, right? Or maybe it's a location, Santa Barbara, and you have more than just 2 clickers, right? You have a couple different infected walking around, and they'll naturally go after you if you're close, but you can also maybe get them to attack. If you throw something at a clicker that's near another person, you're trying to kill that person, and the clicker goes and kills that person. I mean, you want to do Battle Royale, make it like, okay, you have 1 life, and once you lose that life, you're done. If you want to do like a shrinking map, again, this is maybe I just don't understand it. I'm not in the industry as making it, but if you wanted to go kind of big and follow those trends, like, you still have the maps. And I mean, you can think about any of the maps in the game, and then just like, okay, you want to make it Battle Royale, you shrink that outside area, eventually say it ends up in a house. You're just in one house, there's like 2 floors, and you got like 3 of you left, and you just go crazy, right? And like that's your Battle Royale. You never had to make this that big. And that's what always, truly, from the beginning, that's always what frustrated me about this. Even how it was pitched. If you remember, okay, and I think I was around, I even made videos back in the day, like when they announced they were making this thing and just kind of the confusion of like, okay, well, you're making it, but wait, it's not included in the base game. And I just remember like that shock, at least to me, from like those announcements. And then, okay, well, maybe it was going to come out like a year later. And then it just sounded bigger than what it needed to be. And it's like, okay, well, it can still be good. And I'm not saying even like a big version of the multiplayer would have been bad, but I think it got too big and it got too out of control and it got, too caught up in the live service push that PlayStation and the entire industry was doing. It never, to me, because here's the thing, like we got nothing. So what I'm pitching is something versus nothing. And it's something that, again, maybe it only lasts 2 years. Maybe you have like a couple hundred people playing it now. Like say Uncharted 4. Uncharted 4 has multiplayer. It did pretty good when it first came out. You think that game is still populated by tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people now? No, it's a very tight-knit, very small group, but there's still people that play it. There's still enjoyment to be had there. But it did what it needed to do. I'm not mad that we got it. In fact, I really like it, and I've always liked the fact, again, like I like games that can do this because to me, honestly, it's kind of pitched as a throwaway thing. Remember, when companies first started doing this, it was a throwaway thing. It was a throwaway thing. It was an addition to say, hey, maybe this will keep people playing the game longer than the 10-hour story, right? And you hope that it catches on, and you hope that some of these weird ideas, like in all reality, Assassin's Creed maybe caught on a little bit, right? But, the BioShock and Dead Spaces and some of these other games I've mentioned, a lot of them did not work. They were clever ideas, but they never had a big group. And then, maybe like 10 people played it like a year or two after it was out. So, sometimes these things don't work. But for factions, it was a slam dunk. It really was. You could have easily had a pretty thriving community for a year or two. And then, if it dies off, who cares? Because what you have now? You have nothing. You don't have a multiplayer. And, I'm not insisting on doing multiplayer in every game ever. But, you had it here. You really did. And that's just what frustrates me. And playing it again and just really seeing the mechanics, because I think the game functionally was shooting and aiming, and again, like the movement of these characters, the level design, the way that the AI is, and again, you can't necessarily have that in the multiplayer, but you could have AI components to it. It was so good, and it made for the game that we got, and again, a lot of people have opinions on that game, but you easily could have flipped it, into a multiplayer, and they just went too big for literally no reason. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.